Hello and welcome to Native Speakers Academy's Underground Education. My name is G and I am your host. This is designed to be a short digital media netcast in which we are going to look at different issues related to education, schools, society and learning in general. Our aim is to highlight ideas that empower you to take more control of your own life. And today's article is Can't Help Myself: The Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And this is all about a book. It is in effect a book review, but we're not trying to promote the book. I learned about this book from one of my students the other day who said that they had read it and they recommended it to me. And I have found this brief synopsis of the book which I think you might find enlightening. So let's have a look through it together. As usual, links to the source article can be found in a description connected with this post online. So, Can't Help Myself: All About the Power of Habit by Charles Duhigg. And the article itself was written by Timothy D. Wilson, who is a professor of psychology at the University of Virginia. Let's get cracking. Human consciousness, that wonderful ability to reflect, ponder, and choose, is our greatest evolutionary achievement. But it is possible to have too much of a good thing. And fortunately, we also have the ability to operate on automatic pilot, performing complex behaviors without any conscious thought at all. One way this happens is with lots of practice. Tasks that seem impossibly complex at first, like learning how to play the guitar, speak a foreign language, or operate a new DVD player, become second nature after we perform those actions many times. If practice did not make perfect, William James said, nor habit economize the expense of nervous and muscular energy, he, that is, we, would therefore be in a sorry plight or situation. But of course there is a dark side to habits, namely that we acquire bad ones like smoking or overeating. I imagine that most people would love to find an easy way of breaking a bad habit or two. Charles Duhigg, an investigative reporter for the New York Times, has written an entertaining book to help us do just that. The Power of Habit: Why We Do What We Do in Life and Business. Duhigg has read hundreds of scientific papers and interviewed many of the scientists who wrote them, and relays interesting findings on habit formation and change from the fields of social psychology, clinical psychology, and neuroscience. This is not a self-help book conveying one author's homespun remedies, but a serious look at the science of habit formation and change. Duhigg is optimistic about how we can put the science to use. Once you understand that habits can change, he concludes, you have the freedom and the responsibility to remake them. Once you understand that habits can be rebuilt, the power becomes easier to grasp, and the only option left is to get to work. He also suggests that by understanding the nature of habits, we can influence group behavior, turning companies into profit makers and ensuring the success of social movements. comment, perhaps you can see where this is leading. If you've been following the other work that I've done, you will see a pattern developing. He makes his case by presenting fascinating stories and case histories. Readers will learn how and why Target can tell which of its female customers are pregnant even before they have told their friends and family. How Rick Warren went from a depressed minister of a small congregation to the leader of one of the biggest megachurches in the world. And why Rosa Parks' refusal to give up her seat started a movement when similar refusals by others had not. And why a 1987 fire in a London Underground station failed to be contained, leading to the deaths of 31 people. One of the subtexts which is not discussed in this article is the nature of management and organization, specifically scientific management, where if you have a large problem, the simplest, most natural way to deal with it is to divide it into smaller parts, and then those parts into smaller parts, and then those parts into smaller parts, and set specific groups of people or individuals tasks to solve problems in smaller areas. That's how we get to build space stations, for example, or rockets that go to the moon, or even the way in which schools are designed. Let's continue. Unfortunately, it's not always clear from Duhigg's book how we should boil down these examples into a prescription for change, because he combines markedly different behaviors at the individual and society levels into the rubric of habits. In the first chapter, he presents a simple scheme called the habit loop, whereby an environmental cue automatically leads to a behavioral routine that results in a reward. Consider that point very carefully. An environmental cue automatically leads to a behavioral routine that results in a reward. To change a person, all you have to do is change the environment in which they live or act. He sticks to this scheme throughout, using it as a framework to understand such diverse behaviors as why people buy a certain brand of toothpaste, become addicted to cigarettes and alcohol, and prefer particular songs on the radio. The danger of trying to explain so much with one framework is that it sidesteps crucial distinctions about why people behave mindlessly. Distinctions we need to understand if we want to change those behaviors. He also neglects to mention childhood as an effect on this. One way behavior can become habitual, as noted, is through repetition. If we acquire a bad habit this way, it is very hard to change because its grooves are so well worn in our minds. We have to painstakingly practice a better response that wears a new groove. Duhigg gives the example of the success of former NFL coach Tony Dungy, who with lots and lots of practice taught his players a small number of important moves they could perform without thinking, even at the most crucial point in a game. Bad habits are overcome by learning new routines and practicing them over and over again. But then there are compulsions and addictions, behaviors that involve dependence on a chemical substance like nicotine or alcohol, or behaviors that have become so rewarding that they're nearly impossible to resist. For example, gambling. As many wrecked families can attest, these habits are the hardest to change. Unfortunately, there is no magic bullet, though intensive treatments and social support can work. Again, no mention of childhood experiences or missing experiences. Other behaviors are habitual because they obey social norms, norms that we rarely question or think about. We shake hands when we greet people. We wear socks of the same color and eat with a fork because these are the customs we have learned. Such behaviors are not well-worn grooves in our mind, but actions we could easily alter if the laws or customs that govern them should change. And so we ourselves can be changed. In the not-so-distant past, for example, Americans habitually failed to wear their seatbelts. In 1984, 86% failed to buckle up. By 2010, this habit had flipped, such that 85% of people now wore seatbelts. This change did not involve learning a new routine, as happens when people spend hundreds of hours learning a musical instrument. After all, people already knew how to grab the belt and insert the buckle into the receptacle. Rather, it happened because of changing norms in our society, spurred on by legislation. In fact, social psychologists have shown that an effective way of changing many habitual behaviors is to change people's perceptions of the norms that govern them, resulting in reduced drinking on college campuses. Comment, I very much doubt that, for instance, and lowered energy use in the home. We are being studied. Keep that in the back of your mind. There is another type of habitual behavior that involves more cognitive activity, namely people's interpretation of a situation according to what it means for them and how it fits into the narratives they tell themselves. These behaviors are habitual in the sense that people have chronic ways of interpreting the world. A black college student's story, for example, may be that she doesn't belong to the majority white university she attends, which causes her to fall into a pattern of disengagement and academic failure. Research shows that changing black students' stories about their sense of belonging improves their academic performance and health throughout college. The point is that habitual behaviors come in many different forms, and squeezing them into one framework misses some of the nuances of how to change behavior effectively. In recent years, social psychologists have developed many effective interventions. I'll read that again. In recent years, social psychologists have developed many effective interventions to help people improve their lives, only some of which involve breaking bad habits in the way Duhigg describes. And this article, again, was written by Timothy D. Wilson, who is a professor of psychology at the University of Virginia. And the theme running through this is that we are the objects of the studies. We are sometimes studying ourselves and sometimes being studied by specific groups of psychologists, perhaps even psychiatrists, who are manipulating us and the world around us, and we need to be aware of those manipulations. I am reminded of a short passage from the book The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, where close to the beginning of the book he wrote, No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's, and yet as mortal as his own. That as men busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, perhaps almost as narrowly as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. So thank you for your attention. Native Speakers Academy is a small independent center for educational theory and research, and you can support us by visiting our websites at nsa-slovakia.com or nsa-education.com. We are also all over the internet, so why don't you join in one of our conversations on Facebook or Google Plus, or check us out on Pinterest. I hope you liked this article. It might influence you in your choice of future reading. Who knows? If you do want to make a comment about that, you can attach a comment to the bottom of the video on the YouTube channel, or you can leave a comment anywhere else for me. I hope to talk to you again soon. Until then, stay safe and have a good day. Bye for now.